So I'm actually driving, I'm like on my way home and I'm driving and I talk to myself. I like interview myself inside my helmet. I've done this for a really, really long time. This is not me being cracked. This is something that I've done for a really long time. It's just kind of like how I think. So I'm sitting here driving. I'm thinking about what it is that like bothers me so much about like hacks. Like everyone wants this shortcut to, you know, cardio, or shortcut to learning a technique, or shortcut to Muay Thai, whatever. Like the whole world right now is obsessed with these hacks, and I really have disagreed with this method and this idea for a really long time. And as I was driving, I came up with this kind of explanation for expressing what it is about that I dislike so much. One of the things that I really, really love about Muay Thai, like one of the things that first drew me to it and attracted me to it and that I love very dearly about it, is that of martial arts, it's still very martial. Like it still comes from its roots. It's still very like rooted in its like battlefield roots, which I really like. A lot of martial arts, when they became sports, they became a lot more performative. You kind of took the martial part out and emphasized the art, so it became like katas, or like, you know, choreography, demonstrational, like this kind of thing. Muay Thai right now yet is not quite like that, which I like very much. It might be going in that direction kind of with some of the things that are popular right now, and also with, hitting my lens a little bit. Also with, you know, moving it towards amateur and Olympic and all these things. So, something that's happened with martial arts, like, so I'm saying that Muay Thai has remained more martial, and the martial arts have become less so in a lot of categories. Something that's happening with this, like, shortcut thing is that people are trying to move away from the art of martial arts. And I think that's what I dislike, and what bothers me so much about this, like, idea that you want a shortcut or a hack or whatever these things are. So I was thinking about like things that are art forms, things that are really beautiful, and they have like a kind of pedagogy and rule set to them, and a history and a tradition, all of these things that make an art form. So picture like a swordsmith, right? So Japanese sword making is this incredible history. It has so much rich rules and how you do things, and they make just these unbelievable swords. I'm not a sword person. I don't know stuff about swords, but I can look at a Japanese sword and be like, that is an incredible piece of art. So this has like masters and apprentices, and like you learn this trade, you learn this whole art form. So say you want to like fold the metal of a sword 100 times. That's what makes a certain kind of sword. But you don't actually want to go through the effort of folding the metal 100 times. And so you have some kind of like technique hack that allows you to smash it less often, or you have some kind of chemical that allows you to heat it to a lower temperature and it still melts, or you have a machine that pounds it for you. Like, there are all of these hack shortcuts that allow you to get those 100 layers without actually putting forth the work and the effort that your master or someone before you would require in order to get those 100 layers. That's what these hacks are. So it takes like a master making the sword 100 days to make this sword, and it takes you like 10 days to make this sword. That's progress. That's amazing, right? It's entirely possible that that swordsmith, that master, could have made that sword doing all of the same things, like no shortcuts, no hacks, no machines, no chemicals. He could have done the exact same sword, the same amazing sword, also in the 10 days, but there's a reason it takes 100 days for him to make that sword. It's part of the art form, it's part of the history, the tradition, it's like part of the way you perform swordsmithing. So we look at this as like, oh my god, I've come up with this better technology, I can make this sword that's more or less the same in a less amount of time. Like, how could that possibly be a bad thing? And I'm like, at some point, and this is what I'm thinking about with martial arts, at some point you're not swordsmithing anymore, you're producing. You're like manufacturing a sword at some point. So when we're looking for these hacks or these kind of shortcuts, or like, I don't want to do it this way because that's the way they did it back in the old day and it was stupid, and now we have better technologies and we have better ways of doing this and blah, 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 you're losing the art at some point. Maybe not right away. Maybe there are some hacks that are good. But there is swordsmithing, and then there is making a sword, and those are not necessarily the same things. And I don't think that people would put a sword on their wall and be like, ah, this thing was made in 10 days, isn't it amazing? You want the one that's like, this was produced over 100 days doing all of the things that for hundreds of years they've been developing, of like, this is how long it takes and what you have to do to make that sword. And I think that there is a place for shortcuts, there is a place for hacks, but the place for them is not that we are now advanced and we've like come a long way and this is now how we do things. The place to have a hack or a shortcut is when you need a hack or a shortcut. So, I'll give you an example. Say you got booked for a fight on short notice and you just do not have time, you haven't been training full, you don't have time to fully prepare for this fight. And so there are hacks or shortcuts for you to like get your cardio up or lose your weight or whatever the thing is in a shorter period of time than normally you would do in the more kind of traditional set of how you would do these things. You can use that. That's very useful to have these technologies or to have these like different ways of doing things in a shorter period of time, a hack for a short-term solution to something that you didn't really have time to prepare for. That makes sense. That doesn't mean that that's how you should always do it. Like, I watched a lot of like cooking shows. I actually watch a blacksmithing show, like metalworking. And these things are timed, like they have artificial time limits put on them. And so people have to do things not in the ideal way to do them because they have to do it within the amount of time of the show. And so they're running out of time. They have to, you know, bake their pie without blind baking it first, like all of these different things. When these swordsmiths are working, they have to do something that they wouldn't normally do. They cool it too fast, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out okay. Like, they make it. They make something that's edible, they make something that's delicious, they make a sword that doesn't break when you smash it against a wall, this kind of thing. That doesn't mean that you're gonna go and do it that way the rest of the time. When you had an artificial time limit, when you had a window that you had to use a different method in order to get there, it worked because you had circumstances that made it so that you had to do it that way. That doesn't mean all these bakers are gonna go home and they're like, yeah, it takes 45 minutes to bake a pie, and in this show I did it in 25 minutes because I absolutely had to. Now I'm going to bake all my pies in 25 minutes. That's not what happens. That's not what people do. So my argument here, what I've been battling about, is that there is an art to the tradition of what we're learning when we're learning martial arts. It is martial arts. And part of that art is the way things are done. Part of the art is keeping things the way that they've been done because that's the tradition, because that's the way they've been formed. Like, there's something beautiful about the fact that it takes an absolute swordsmith 100 days to make that sword, even if he could make it in 10 days. Taking 100 days to do it, it's a 100-day sword, means something. And I just don't want that to be lost. So I'm talking to myself inside my helmet on my way home, thinking about these things, and now I shot a video, so now you guys know these things, and this is how I feel about this. I'm gonna go home now. That's just what I'm thinking about right now. Keep the traditions, preserve the legacy, that kind of thing.